Quan wiped the sweat from his forehead as he walked through the lower cargo bay of Station Vermilion 9. The air was hot down here, and the lights flickered every few seconds. Nobody important ever came to this part of the station. It was just him and the cargo containers, checking seals and making sure nothing was leaking or broken. He had been doing this job for 3 years now. Every day was the same. Walk the rows, check the containers, fill out the reports. The other workers on the station barely noticed him. The aliens who ran the shops and offices definitely didn't notice him. Humans were new to the galaxy, and most aliens thought they were weak and fragile, easy to break, not worth paying attention to. Quan didn't mind being invisible. He had left Earth to see the stars, and he was seeing them. Maybe his job wasn't exciting, but it was honest work. He had a small room, enough food, and sometimes he could sit by the observation windows and watch the ships come and go. That was enough. He turned a corner between 2 tall stacks of containers and froze. Voices. Angry voices speaking in the clicking language of the Vryn. Quan knew enough about aliens to recognize Vryn raiders when he saw them. 4 of them, their insect-like bodies covered in dark armor, their many arms holding weapons. They were surrounding something small. A child. Quan's heart jumped. The little girl couldn't have been more than 6 years old. She had pale blue skin and white hair, which meant she was Kelthran. Everyone on the station knew about the Kelthran. They were warriors, famous across the galaxy for their strength and honor. But this was just a child, small and scared, pressed against a container with nowhere to run. She clutched a silver pendant in her tiny hands. "Give it," one of the raiders clicked, waving a long blade. "Give pendant. Come with us. No hurt if you listen." The child shook her head, tears running down her face. Quan should have run. He should have hit his emergency comm and called for security. He should have done anything except what he did next. But his feet moved before his brain could stop them. He walked forward and stepped between the raiders and the child. "Leave her alone," Quan said. His voice didn't sound as brave as he wanted it to. The 4 Vryn turned to look at him. The lead raider's multiple eyes blinked in what might have been surprise. Then it laughed, a horrible chittering sound. "Human?" it clicked. "Soft-skin human? You go away. This not your business." Quan spread, his arms wide, making himself bigger, blocking the child from their view. "I'm not moving." The raider's laughter stopped. It stepped closer, and Quan could smell something sharp and chemical coming from its armor. "You stupid. We have blades. You have nothing. Move, or we make you move." "No," Quan said simply. The raider studied him for a long moment. Then it nodded to itself as if making a decision. "Then we teach you lesson. We teach all humans lesson about getting in the way." The blade came fast. Quan saw the flash of metal and felt the burning pain in his left shoulder. He gasped but didn't move. The child behind him made a small crying sound. "Still here?" The raider clicked. "We see how long soft skin stands." The second blade cut across his right side. The third opened a gash in his left thigh. Quan's legs shook, and he could feel blood soaking into his uniform. The pain was worse than anything he'd ever felt. Every part of him screamed to run, to fall down, to curl up and protect himself. But if he moved, they would take the child. The 4th blade sliced his right arm. The 5th went into his left side, deeper this time. Quan made a sound he didn't recognize, something between a grunt and a scream. His vision was getting blurry. He could hear the child crying behind him. "Humans break easy," the raider said. "Why you not run? Why you not leave? Just one alien child, not your kind, not your problem." Quan tried to answer, but his mouth wouldn't work right. Why was he doing this? He didn't know the child. She wasn't human. She wasn't his family. By every logical measure, he should save himself. But logic didn't matter when he looked into those scared eyes. Logic didn't matter when he heard her crying. Some things you just did because they were right. Because someone small needed help. Because he was there and he could stand between danger and someone who couldn't protect themselves. The 6th blade stabbed into his right thigh. Quan's legs gave out and he started to fall. No, he thought. Not yet. He twisted as he fell, making sure his body landed between the raiders and the child. He hit the metal floor hard, his blood spreading around him in a dark pool. He could feel the child's small hands clutching his shirt. She was saying something in her language, but he couldn't understand the words. He tried to stay conscious, tried to keep his eyes open, tried to be a wall they couldn't get past. The seventh blade went into his lower back. Quan's whole body jerked. Everything felt cold and far away. He could barely feel the floor under him anymore. Still protecting her? The raider clicked. It sounded almost curious now. Stupid human. Die for nothing. The eighth blade came down, punching through his shoulder blade from behind. Quan felt it grind against bone. His vision went white, then gray, then started to go dark. He could hear alarms now, loud and getting louder. Security sirens. The child's distress beacon had finally been noticed. "We go," one of the other raiders said. "Security coming. Move now." The sound of many feet running away. Voices shouting, hands touching him, moving him. The child was still crying, but the sound was getting further away. Someone was talking to him, saying his name, telling him to stay awake. Quan wanted to stay awake. He wanted to know if the child was okay. He wanted to explain that he wasn't a hero. He was just a cargo inspector who couldn't walk away. But the darkness was pulling him down, and he was so tired. The last thing he heard before everything went black was someone saying the child was safe. That was good, he thought. That made the pain worth it. Then he thought nothing at all. Pain was the first thing Quan felt when he woke up. Not the sharp, terrible pain from the blades, but a deep ache that covered his whole body. Everything hurt. His shoulders, his sides, his legs, his back. He tried to move and immediately regretted it. "Don't move yet," a woman's voice said. "Your body is still healing." Quan forced his eyes open. The lights were too bright and he had to blink several times before he could see clearly. He was in a bed with white sheets. Medical equipment beeped softly around him. The walls were the clean gray of the station's medical bay. A human woman in a doctor's coat stood beside his bed. She had kind eyes and short black hair. Her name tag said Dr. Una Park. "You've been asleep for 3 days, Una said softly. "We weren't sure you'd wake up." "You lost a lot of blood. The wounds were very deep. You should have died, Quan, 3 days. Quan's throat was dry. He tried to speak, but only managed a rough whisper. "The child?" Una smiled. "She's fine. Not a scratch on her. You protected her completely." Relief flooded through him, and Quan closed his eyes for a moment. The child was safe. That was all that mattered. He took a slow breath and opened his eyes again. That was when he saw them. At the foot of his bed stood 7 figures in armor. The armor was beautiful, made of some metal that seemed to glow with a soft blue light. Each piece was covered in strange markings and symbols. The figures stood perfectly still like statues, their helmets facing toward him. Quan's breath caught. Even through the helmets he could tell they were Kelthran. These weren't ordinary soldiers. The armor was too fine, the weapons at their sides too perfectly crafted. These were warriors of the highest rank. "They've been standing there since you arrived," Una whispered. She sounded nervous. "They haven't moved. They haven't spoken. They just stand and watch you." As if responding to Una's words, the central figure moved. She reached up and removed her helmet with both hands. The face beneath was sharp and elegant, with pale blue skin and white hair pulled back in a complex braid. 3 thin scars ran down her left cheek, marking her face with lines that somehow made her more beautiful, not less. Her eyes were bright silver, and they studied Quan with an intensity that made him feel small. "You are awake," she said. Her voice was formal and precise, each word carefully chosen. "This is good. I am Commander Thiel of the First Blade Circle. We have been waiting for you." Quan tried to sit up, but pain shot through his back. Una quickly helped him, adjusting the bed so he could lean against it. His whole torso was wrapped in some kind of mesh that glowed faintly. Healing technology from one of the advanced races, probably. Expensive healing technology. "I don't understand," Quan said. "Why are you here?" Thiel's expression didn't change. "You stood between danger and Keth-child Lyra, daughter of High Lord Vakor himself. You bled for her. You fell for her. You placed your body as a shield when you could no longer stand. By the oldest laws of my people, you have earned a debt of honor." "I just did what anyone would do," Quan said. For the first time, something like emotion crossed Thiel's face. Surprise, maybe, or respect. No, she said firmly. Anyone would not do this. Most would run. Many would hide. Some would call for help and wait at safe distance. You stood alone against 4 armed raiders with no weapon and no armor. You took 8 blades and did not move until the child was protected. She stepped closer to the bed, and the other 6 warriors moved with her, perfectly synchronized. They arranged themselves around his bed, and as one, they placed their right fists over their hearts. 8 blades struck you, Thiel said, and her voice rang with ceremony. By our law, 8 blade circles owe you answer. I am first circle. Until your debt is honored or you release us, we are your blade and shield. We stand for you. We fight for you. Your enemies are our enemies. Your protection is our purpose. This is the guardian oath, and we swear it freely. Quan stared at them. His mind was still foggy from sleep and painkillers, and he couldn't make sense of what he was hearing. I don't want anyone to fight for me. I just wanted to help a scared child. We know, Thiel said. This is why the oath has power. You asked for nothing. You expected nothing. You acted without thought of reward or recognition. This is the highest form of courage, and it demands the highest form of answer. Yuna leaned close to Quan and whispered urgently, Do you understand what this means? The Kelthrin never forget a blood debt. These are elite warriors, the best of the best, and they're swearing to serve you. Every diplomat on this station has been trying to get their attention for months, and you have 7 of them standing in your hospital room. Quan looked at the warriors. They stood like pillars of strength, their armor gleaming in the medical bay lights. Each one radiated power and skill. These were people who had spent their entire lives training for combat. What could they possibly want with a cargo inspector? Please, Quan said. I release you from this oath. You don't owe me anything. Thiel shook her head. It is not so simple. The oath is not yours alone to give or take. It belongs to our people, our honor, our history. 8 blades struck you. 8 circles will answer. This is done. The only choice you have is whether to accept with grace or to make this difficult for everyone. One of the other warriors removed her helmet. She was younger than Thiel, maybe only 16 or 17 in human years. Her face was unmarked by scars, and her eyes were curious rather than intimidating. I am Jaiho of the First Circle, she said, and her voice was friendlier than Thiel's. Please do not be afraid of us. We know humans are new to the galaxy. We know your people do not have such customs. But understand this, you honored us by protecting one of our children. Let us honor you by standing at your side. It is our way. Quan looked at Jiho's open, honest face, and some of his confusion faded. These weren't politicians or people trying to use him. They were warriors following their code, and that code said he had done something worth recognizing. I don't know what I'm supposed to do, Quan admitted. For now, Thiel said, you rest and heal. Your body took great damage. When you are recovered, we will speak more of what comes next. But know this, the word has already spread. The Vryn who attacked you have been caught. High Lord Vakor himself is coming to this station, and 7 more circles are on their way. 7 more? Quan's eyes widened. Why? Thiel's expression was somewhere between amusement and respect. 8 blades, she repeated. 8 circles. You think First Circle alone would answer such a debt? No. By the time the moon turns twice, there will be 56 of the finest warriors in the galaxy standing ready to serve the human who would not move. Quan closed his eyes. This couldn't be real. 3 days ago, he was checking cargo seals. Now he had an army of alien warriors swearing oaths to him. His simple life was gone, replaced by something he didn't understand and couldn't control. But when he opened his eyes again, they were still there. Still standing. Still waiting. Get some rest, Yuna said gently. You're still healing. We can worry about the rest later. As Quan's eyes grew heavy again, the last thing he saw was Thiel and her warriors standing guard, protecting him, just as he had protected their child. Maybe, he thought as sleep took him, maybe some debts were worth carrying. 2 weeks after waking up, Quan could finally walk without help. The healing mesh had done its work, and the deep wounds had closed into pale pink scars. Yuna said he was lucky to be alive, let alone walking. Quan didn't feel lucky. He felt confused and overwhelmed. The First Circle had not left his side. When he was moved from the medical bay to temporary quarters, they came with him. When he ate, they stood nearby. When he slept, they stood guard outside his door. It was strange having warriors watch over him all the time. But Quan was slowly getting used to it. What he wasn't used to were the visitors. They came every day now ever since word spread about what happened. Station officials, trade representatives, even other humans who wanted to meet the man who had earned a Kelthran honor guard. Today's visitor was Mion, the senior human diplomat on the station. She sat across from Quan in his small quarters, her face serious and tired. The first circle stood along the wall, silent and watchful as always. "Do you understand what you've done?" Mion asked. She didn't sound angry, just exhausted. "In one act of stupidity or bravery, I can't decide which. You've changed everything for humanity's position in galactic politics." Quan shifted uncomfortably. "I just helped a child." "You helped the daughter of one of the most powerful lords in the Kelthran Empire," Mion corrected. "And now you have 7 elite warriors sworn to your service. Do you know how many governments would kill for that kind of connection? How many trade deals have failed because we couldn't get the Kelthran to take us seriously? They thought we were weak, disposable. Now they're calling you the unmoving shield. Songs are being written about you on their homeworld." "Songs?" Quan felt his face grow hot. "That's ridiculous. That's their culture," Mion said. "They value courage and honor above everything else. You showed both in a way they understand. But Quan, this comes with problems too." Thiel spoke from her position by the wall. "What problems do you speak of, Diplomat Mion?" Mion glanced at the commander. "The Vryn Mercenary Guild has put a bounty on Quan's head. A substantial one. They say he interfered with their business and made them look weak. Other mercenary groups are watching to see if they can collect." Quan's stomach dropped. "They want to kill me?" "They want to make an example of you," Mion said. "And there are other groups too. Some aliens don't like that a human earned such respect from the Kelthran. They see it as a threat to the established order. We've intercepted 3 separate plots to kidnap or harm you in the last week alone." "This is not a concern," Thiel said calmly. "Let them come. They will learn why the First Circle has never lost a warrior in combat." Mion sighed. "That's exactly the attitude that worries me. If this turns into a war, if people start dying because of Quan, it could destroy the fragile peace we've been building. Then what am I supposed to do?" Quan asked. "Hide forever? Pretend this never happened?" "I don't know," Mion admitted. "But I needed you to understand the situation. You're not just a cargo inspector anymore. You're a symbol now, to humans, to Kelthran, to everyone watching. That's a heavy thing to carry." After Mion left, Quan sat in silence. He stared at his hands, at the thin scars that marked where the blades had cut him. Everything had gotten so complicated. All he'd wanted was to keep a child safe. Now he had bounties on his head and warriors following him everywhere and people writing songs about him. Jiho approached and sat down beside him. The young warrior had been the most talkative of the First Circle, often asking questions about Earth and human customs. She'd become something like a friend over the past 2 weeks. "You are troubled," Jiho said. "It wasn't a question." "Everything is too much," Quan admitted. "I'm not a hero. I'm not anyone special. I don't know why this is happening." Jiho tilted her head. "You stood against 4 raiders with no weapon. You took 8 blades and did not fall until the child was safe. How is this not special?" "Anyone would have done it." "No," Jiho said firmly. "I have trained my entire life for combat. I am skilled with every weapon, fast and strong. But what you did, I do not know if I could do. To stand without any hope of winning. To take pain knowing more pain is coming. To sacrifice yourself for someone you do not know. That takes a courage different from battle courage. That takes a courage we Kelthran have forgotten." Quan looked at her in surprise. "What do you mean?" "We train from childhood to fight, to win, to never surrender," Jiho explained. "But somewhere in all that training we learned to calculate. Is this fight worth it? Can I win? What is the strategic value? You did not calculate. You just saw someone who needed help and you helped. It is simple and pure and very human, I think." Before Quan could respond, Thiel called them both over. She had a serious expression. "Come. If you are to carry the weight of what you have become, you must learn to defend yourself. The First Circle will train you in our ways." Quan blinked. "Train me? I'm not a warrior. I can barely do 10 push-ups." "You do not need to be a master," Thiel said, "but you need to not be helpless. We will teach you to survive, to escape, to fight when necessary. It is the least we can do." For the next 3 hours, the First Circle put Quan through basic training. They were surprisingly patient teachers, showing him simple moves and techniques. Nothing fancy, nothing complicated. Just practical skills that might save his life. How to block, how to dodge, how to strike at vulnerable points, how to break a grab, how to create distance, how to identify exits. Quan was sweating and sore by the end, but he felt a little better. A little more in control, like maybe he wasn't completely helpless. After training, Jiho stayed behind while the others took up guard positions. She seemed nervous, which was unusual for her. "There is something you should know," she said quietly. "Commander Thael has been investigating the attack." "The one on Lyra. Investigating?" Quan asked. "The raiders knew exactly where to find her," Jiho said. "They knew when she would be separated from her guards. They knew which cargo bay she would pass through. This was not chance. Someone told them." Quan felt cold. "You mean someone set up the attack? Deliberately?" "We believe so. And we believe you were not supposed to be there. You were not part of the plan. Whoever arranged this wanted Lyra kidnapped or killed, and they wanted it to look like random violence. But you interfered. You saved her, and now the whole plot is exposed. Do you know who did it?" Jiho shook her head. "Not yet. But Thael is very good at finding truth. She will discover who is responsible. And when she does," the young warrior's face hardened, "they will face justice." That night, Quan lay in his bed and stared at the ceiling. Outside his door, he could hear the soft sounds of the first circle keeping watch. They never slept all at once, always keeping at least 3 warriors alert and ready. He thought about Mion's words. He was a symbol now. People were watching him, some with hope, some with hatred. His simple life was gone forever. But then he thought about Lyra, the small Kelthran child with the silver pendant. He remembered her scared face, her tears. Someone had tried to hurt her, to use her in some political game. Someone had seen a 6-year-old child as just a tool, a means to an end. And that made Quan angry. Not the hot, violent anger he'd seen in the Raiders, but a cold, determined anger. The kind that made decisions and stuck to them. If being a symbol meant he could help stop people who hurt children, then maybe being a symbol was okay. He touched the scars on his shoulder, remembering the pain of the blades. 8 strikes, 8 circles now sworn to him. He hadn't asked for any of this. But he was here now, and running away wouldn't help anyone. The next morning, when Thael asked if he wanted to continue training, Quan said yes without hesitation. If he was going to carry this weight, he would learn to carry it properly. And somewhere out there, whoever had arranged the attack on Lyra was still free. Still planning. Still dangerous. Quan didn't know much about galactic politics or warrior honor codes, but he knew right from wrong, and he knew that some fights were worth having even when you were scared. Especially when you were scared. The station changed over the next month. Quan watched it happen from his quarters and during his carefully guarded walks through the upper levels. More Kelthran warriors arrived every week, each group announcing themselves with ceremony and formal oaths. By the end of the month, all 8 circles had gathered on Vermilion 9. The station had never seen so many elite warriors in one place. The second circle came first, specialists in ship combat and orbital warfare. They took positions controlling the docking bays. The third circle arrived in shadow, stealth operatives who moved through the station like ghosts. No one saw them arrive. They were simply there one morning, standing with the others. The fourth circle brought siege equipment and defensive positions. Within days, every entrance to Quan's section of the station had been fortified. The fifth circle were diplomatic guards, warriors trained to protect peace talks and negotiations. They established communication networks and liaison positions. The sixth circle fascinated Quan the most. They were tech warriors who combined ancient fighting traditions with modern technology. Their armor glowed with energy shields, and their weapons could shift between blade and energy fire. The seventh circle were blade dancers, duelists who had never lost in single combat. They moved like water, graceful and deadly. And then the eighth circle arrived. The eldest, warriors who had survived hundreds of years of combat. Their armor was scarred and ancient, repaired so many times that each piece told a story. Their leader was Kelthus himself, a warrior so old his white hair had turned silver and his face was a map of honor scars. 56 of the finest warriors in the galaxy, all gathered because of Quan, all sworn to honor the dead of 8 blades. Quan stood in the observation area watching ships come and go, Jiho beside him as usual. The young warrior had become his constant companion, teaching him Kelthran customs and helping him navigate the complicated politics. "Do you ever regret it?" Jiho asked suddenly. Regret standing for Lyra? Quan thought about it. His life was completely different now. He couldn't go anywhere alone. People stared at him. The bounty on his head had grown to an amount that would make some people rich for life. He had nightmares about the blade sometimes, waking up in cold sweat. No, he said finally. If I had walked away, I don't think I could live with myself. Jiho nodded, satisfied. This is why the circles serve you. Not because of law or tradition. Because you are worthy. Before Quan could respond, Thiel appeared. She moved quickly, her face serious. Come. The 8th Circle has found something important. All commanders are gathering. They walked to a secured conference room deep in the fortified section. All 8 Circle commanders were there, standing around a holographic display. Kelthus, the ancient warrior of the 8th Circle, gestured to the projection. We have traced the conspiracy, he said. His voice was like gravel, rough with age but strong. 3 species arranged the attack on High Lord Vakor's daughter. The Vryn Raiders were just tools. The real planners are the Telvorn Commerce Union, the Shalak Defense Consortium, and members of the Kraw Parliament. Mayon was there too, her face pale. Those are major powers. If they're working together, they profit from instability, Thiel said. War means weapons sales, security contracts, emergency trade agreements. Peace is bad for their business. They wanted to assassinate Lyra and blame the station's security. It would have started a conflict between the Kelthrin and the Council. Humans, being new and expendable, would have been the scapegoats. Quan felt sick. They were going to start a war? Kill a child to start a war? Yes, Kelthus said simply. But you interfered. You saved the child and exposed their plot by surviving. Now they are desperate. They know we are investigating. They know their conspiracy is unraveling. What will they do? Quan asked. The commanders exchanged glances. It was Thiel who answered. They will try to eliminate the evidence. And you are evidence. You are the witness who survived. The human who proved their plan could fail. If they kill you, the story becomes about mercenary violence, not organized conspiracy. The trail goes cold. They're going to attack him, Mion said. When, where? Soon, Thiel said. High Lord Vakor arrives in 3 days for a formal ceremony. They will strike then when attention is divided. They have been gathering forces. We estimate over 200 mercenaries from various species. They plan to overwhelm us with numbers. Quan's mouth went dry. 200 against 56? Those aren't good odds. Kelthus laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. Young human, the 8th Circle has faced worse odds than this. But you are right to be concerned. This will not be an easy fight. Over the next 3 days, the station tensed like a drawn bow. Everyone could feel something coming. Station security was increased. Civilians were quietly moved to safer sections. The 8 Circles prepared defensive positions and planned their tactics. Quan trained harder than ever. Thiel and Jiho worked with him every day, teaching him to fight, to survive, to think like a warrior. He would never be as skilled as them, but he was learning. His body was getting stronger, his reflexes faster. The scars from the 8 blades ached sometimes, but they reminded him why he was doing this. On the 2nd night, Jiho found him sitting alone in his quarters. She sat down without speaking, just keeping him company. Finally, Quan broke the silence. I'm scared, he admitted. 200 enemies. I've never even been in a real fight before the cargo bay. Being scared is good, Jiho said. Fear keeps you alert. Fear keeps you alive. The trick is not letting fear control you. How do I do that? You already know how, Jiho said. You did it when you stood for Lyra. You felt fear, but you acted anyway. That is true courage. Quan smiled slightly. The Kelthrin have a lot of wisdom about courage. We have a lot of practice with fear, Jiho corrected. Every warrior is afraid before battle. We just train to act despite the fear. The next morning, High Lord Vakor's ship arrived. It was massive, a warship covered in ceremonial markings. The Lord himself was tall and imposing, his armor decorated with honors from 100 battles. But when he saw Quan, he knelt. You saved my daughter, Vakor said, his voice thick with emotion. You bled for her, fell for her. There are no words in any language sufficient to thank you. Quan helped the Lord stand, uncomfortable with such a powerful figure kneeling. I'm just glad she's safe. She asks about you every day, Vakor said. She wants to meet the human who stood like a mountain between her and danger. After this ceremony, if you permit, I will bring her to thank you herself. The ceremony was planned for the main hall, a large open space where official events were held. Quan would receive formal recognition from the Kelthran Empire. Dignitaries from a dozen species would attend. It was supposed to be a moment of celebration, but the 8 circles knew better. They positioned themselves carefully, each circle covering different approaches. The 3rd circle's stealth operatives spread through the shadows. The 4th circle's defensive positions blocked key corridors. The 2nd circle secured the space approaches. Tyel pulled Quan aside before the ceremony. "Stay close to Jiho and me. Do not try to be a hero. Your job is to survive. Let us do what we were trained for." "What if?" Quan started. "No," Tyel said firmly. "No what ifs. You trust us. We trust you. We fight together, or not at all." As they walked toward the main hall, Quan felt the weight of what was coming. Somewhere out there, 200 mercenaries were preparing to attack. They wanted him dead. They wanted to cover up their crimes and return to profiting from chaos. But they were about to learn something important about humans, something the galaxy was slowly discovering. Humans didn't always calculate the odds. They didn't always choose the smart, safe option. Sometimes they just stood up for what was right, no matter the cost. And when you stood with humans, you learned to do the same. The ceremony began with formal speeches and presentations. Quan barely heard them. He was watching the circles, seeing how they moved, how they communicated with tiny gestures and glances. They were ready. They were waiting. And then, right as High Lord Vakor was about to award Quan the Star of Keltis, the alarm started screaming. The attack had begun. The explosions came from 3 directions at once. The main hall shook as mercenaries blasted through reinforced walls. Civilians screamed and ran for the exits. High Lord Vakor's personal guards formed a shield around him, their weapons drawn. The 8 circles moved like they were one organism. The 1st circle surrounded Quan and the dignitaries, weapons ready. The 2nd and 4th circles moved to intercept the breaches. The 3rd circle vanished into the smoke and chaos, hunting targets. The others took defensive positions with practiced speed. Through the smoke and fire, Quan saw them. Mercenaries from a dozen different species, all heavily armed. Vryn raiders with their blade arms, Telvorn soldiers in powered armor, Shalak warriors with energy weapons, Crow shock troops with their thick hides and massive strength. Over 200 enemies, all focused on one goal: kill the human, hide the conspiracy, return to business as usual. A Vryn raider broke through the defensive line, rushing straight at Quan with blades extended. Quan's training kicked in without thought. He dodged left, grabbed a fallen energy weapon from the ground and fired. The shot went wide but made the raider stumble. Jiho was there instantly, her blade flashing. The raider fell. "Stay behind me!" Jiho shouted over the noise of battle, but staying behind anyone was impossible. The fighting was everywhere. Thiel's voice cut through the chaos, commanding the circles with precision. "2nd circle, secure the north breach. 4th, reinforce the east wall. 7th circle, engage their shock troops." The blade dancers of the 7th circle flowed into combat like water. Quan watched in awe as they moved between enemies, their weapons singing. Every movement was perfect, every strike found its mark. They were fighting 2, 3, sometimes 4 opponents at once and winning. The 6th circle's tech warriors activated their energy shields, creating barriers of light that stopped enemy fire. Behind these shields, the 5th circle's diplomatic guards coordinated defensive positions and evacuated civilians. The ancient warriors of the 8th circle fought with brutal efficiency, their centuries of experience showing in every move. An explosion rocked the hall. Part of the ceiling collapsed, and Quan saw more mercenaries pouring in from above. They had breached every defense, thrown everything they had at this attack. The circles were incredible fighters, but even they couldn't be everywhere at once. A Telvorn soldier in heavy armor charged at Quan, energy hammer raised. Quan rolled aside, but not fast enough. The hammer clipped his shoulder and pain shot through his arm. He fell hard, his weapon skittering away across the floor. The soldier raised his hammer for a killing blow. Quan saw his death coming. Then Keltis was there, the ancient warrior moving faster than should be possible. His blade found the gap in the soldier's armor, and the Telvorn fell. "Get up, young human," Keltis said calmly, as if they were in a training room instead of a battlefield. "You are not done yet." Quan scrambled to his feet. His shoulder throbbed, but nothing felt broken. Around him the battle raged. The circles were holding, but barely. There were just too many enemies. For every mercenary that fell, 2 more took their place. Then Quan heard something that changed everything. A human voice over the station's communication system. All security forces, this is Captain Suho of Station Security. The human in that hall took 8 blades for a child. Are we going to let them kill him? Are we going to hide while he fights? I'm going in. Anyone with courage, follow me. New alarms blared. The sealed security doors burst open. Human security forces poured into the hall, dozens of them armed with whatever weapons they could grab. They weren't soldiers. They were security guards, maintenance workers, cargo handlers. Many of them had probably never fired a weapon in combat before, but they came anyway, because one of their own had stood when he should have run, because courage was contagious, because sometimes you had to fight even when the odds were against you. The mercenaries, who had been pushing forward confidently, suddenly found themselves fighting on 2 fronts. The Kelthran circles in front of them, and angry humans behind them. The tide of battle shifted. Quan saw Captain Suho, a stocky man with graying hair, fighting alongside Thiel. He saw Yuna, his doctor, helping wounded people evacuate while firing a stunner at approaching enemies. He saw dozens of humans who had decided that this was their fight too. The mercenaries began to falter. They had expected to overwhelm 56 Kelthran warriors with superior numbers. They hadn't expected humans to join the fight. They hadn't expected defenders who wouldn't retreat no matter how bad it got. A Shalak commander, seeing his forces breaking, screamed orders to regroup, but it was too late. The third circle had been working in the shadows, taking out enemy leaders and disrupting communications. The 6 circle's tech warriors had hacked the mercenary equipment, turning their own weapons against them. The second circle had sealed the docking bays, cutting off their escape routes. The battle that was supposed to be a quick assassination turned into a disaster for the attackers. Within 30 minutes, the mercenaries were surrendering or fleeing. Those who tried to escape found the station's exits blocked by the 4th Circle's defensive positions. Those who tried to fight found themselves facing warriors who had never known defeat. When the last enemy surrendered, the hall was filled with smoke and the sound of people breathing hard. Quan sank to his knees, exhausted and hurting. His shoulder was definitely damaged and he had cuts and bruises everywhere. But he was alive. Jiho appeared beside him, blood on her armor but smiling. You fought well. Not great, but well. Quan laughed despite the pain. I'll take it. Thiel approached, her armor dented in several places but her eyes bright with satisfaction. The conspiracy is broken. The mercenaries are talking, giving evidence against those who hired them. The Telvorn, Shalak, and Kraw officials involved are being arrested even now. Justice will be served. High Lord Vakor stepped forward, his own guards bloodied but victorious. Today the galaxy witnessed something new. Kelthran and humans fighting side by side, courage answering courage. This will not be forgotten. The aftermath took days to sort out. The mercenary attack had failed completely. The conspirators were exposed and facing trial. 3 member species of the Galactic Council would face sanctions and investigations. The mercenary guilds involved were being dissolved. A week later, Quan stood in the same hall, now repaired and cleaned. This time there were no explosions or battles. Just a ceremony. High Lord Vakor himself presented Quan with the Star of Kelthis, a medallion given only twice before in 4,000 years of Kelthran history. You stood for my daughter, Vakor said. You stood for justice. You stood when others would flee. The Kelthran Empire offers humanity a compact of alliance, not as subjects or inferiors, but as equal partners, because we have seen what your people can do. Diplomats from a dozen species were present. Mian stood with other human officials, tears in her eyes. This was more than anyone had hoped for. Humanity had gone from being barely noticed to having the respect of one of the galaxy's major powers. After the ceremony, Quan was offered everything. Wealth, political positions, titles, estates. He turned it all down. When asked what he wanted, he said simply, I want to go back to my job. Someone needs to keep the cargo bay safe. The Kelthran understood perfectly. It was exactly what one of their own would say. The work mattered more than the glory. Thiel and the First Circle refused to leave. They had sworn an oath, but now it was more than duty. They genuinely respected the quiet human who had shown them that courage didn't always come from warriors. Sometimes it came from cargo inspectors who just couldn't walk away from someone in need. 6 months later, Quan walked his usual route through the lower cargo bays. The work was the same as always. Check the seals, verify the contents, fill out the reports. The same job he'd been doing for years. But now 7 Kelthran warriors in gleaming armor walked at a respectful distance behind him. Jiho stayed closest, still asking questions about Earth and human culture. The others kept watch, protecting not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Quan turned a corner and saw a small human child standing alone, crying. She couldn't have been more than 5 years old, separated from her parents in the maze of cargo containers. Quan knelt down, gave her his most reassuring smile, and asked, "Where's your family? Let's find them together." Behind him, Tael watched with her second-in-command. "I understand now," she said quietly. Why he stood. "It's not courage they possess. It's something we forgot. They haven't yet learned that some people aren't worth saving." The second-in-command nodded. "Perhaps we should learn to forget that lesson, Commander." "Perhaps we should," Tael agreed. As Quan walked with the child, searching for her parents, the warriors followed. Not because of an ancient oath or a debt of honor. Because they had found something rare in the galaxy. Someone who acted without calculating the cost. Someone who saw a person in need and simply helped. In a universe of warriors and conquerors and cold calculations, they had discovered something more dangerous than any weapon. A human who cared. And that, they had learned, could change everything. The child's parents were found, tears and hugs and grateful thanks. Quan waved off their attempts to reward him. It was just the right thing to do. Nothing special.